Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Angie.
And together, we are TwinFinity.
Hey, we succeeded that time.
Oh, we've already had a trial and tribulation just trying to get past second 15.
We have the giggles all of a sudden, and this is what happens when you haven't done a video in a while. You forget how to center yourself.
Oh, I am so far from centered. It's like you've trained all winter to run a marathon, and then on the day of, you can't even get out of bed. It's like, blah, blah, blah.
So before we go too far in, I want to say happy 11 day. I really hope this video cooperates and will upload today. Sometimes they just don't. So if it ends up being tomorrow, we did record this on March 11th. We really wanted to get something out to you on 11 day, even if it's not an 11 video. And since we haven't done a question and answer for like ever, we thought it would be good to finally do that.
So this could be happy 12 day, but I suspect it'll be 11.
It hopefully will. Even if it's later at night, it'll still be 11 days.
Yeah. It might be 11 o'clock tonight, our time, 1 o'clock New York time.
Right. So part of the reason we haven't done a video for so long, our last question and answer video was actually December 31st, which is kind of unheard of for us. But as some of you know, I have really been struggling with sleep, and thank you for those of you who've kind of given me some tips and insights. Some of you have mentioned medical medium and other things. I am finding solutions. It is getting better finally, hooray. But just to give you a little bit of backstory, interestingly enough, today is the 1 year, exactly today, that COVID was announced as a
pandemic.
Thank you. I lost the word. So, interestingly enough, it was 1 year ago, not necessarily to the day, but that my sleep stuff started, and it started for multiple reasons, and that's why it's been such an issue for so long. Part of it is because I am a transmuter, so going through something big like a pandemic has really affected my energy huge as a transmuter, transmuting a lot of the collective energy. As well, my body decided, and sorry if it's TMI for some people, but somebody did say it's not TMI, women should talk about their bodies more. So I'm doing it.
Okay.
My body decided right at the time of a pandemic to start into perimenopause, and that is where my lack of sleep issue, or my sleep issue, has really come from. But also, I really got burnt out, and last year at this time was kind of when the culmination of burnout hit too. So I had all three things hit all at the same time. And let's just say the last year, you can bleep me if you want, has kicked my
bleep.
Thank you. It's been a massive struggle. I have really had to take a lot of rest, a lot of downtime. Rob has been writing our book for the last, what, year now?
Yeah, well, I've really been committed this past 3 months.
Okay.
But I've been chipping away at it before then. Last summer, I was really distracted with just trying to enjoy summer. So
In a pandemic.
Yeah, so I really didn't put a lot of effort into the writing. And lately, I've been a lot more obsessed by it.
Yeah, you've been doing a lot.
I actually wasn't going to mention that, but since you've mentioned it, again, we don't rehearse anything much.
No.
So I have no idea what she's going to talk about.
So my point being, he's doing all this behind the scenes work, and I am doing nothing. I have been so 3D, you wouldn't believe it. I have a stack of spiritual books, haven't read any of those. I just want like nonfiction, don't want anything that's educational. And I spent a lot of time on the couch watching YouTube videos that aren't spiritual either. I've just had a lot of downtime and needed a lot of rest.
Where I've been on kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, I've been very motivated to go back into my memory. I'm doing this from memory first. To go back into my memory and try to pull out almost a form of autobiography. But it's trying to stay focused on the spiritual portion of the journey, not many of the other things.
Yeah.
And, you know, once in a while I hit sections of my life where I'm typing away and I'm almost crying because I'm reliving old emotions. It reminds me very much of when Angie was going back through her diaries
When we
And
shared our story videos.
yeah, we were doing our story videos, and she was going back through her diaries, and I'd come home, and she'd be crying and blubbering away on the couch. Yeah, I almost had one of those moments last night where I run into the time frame where it was time to start to prepare to break up from my 12-year karmic relationship. And I just got all misty about the people that I lost, the former family, etc. So, yeah, it's we're still working. It just hasn't been a lot to do with videos.
No, been really unmotivated to do videos, and I'm learning to just honor where I'm at instead of pushing myself. So I used to be like, yeah, every month we're going to do a video, and I'm a person of integrity and I like to keep to my word, but I've had to really pull back from that and just do what I can. I have been so exhausted that if I can't, I can't, and I just am learning to really honor that. So also, before we get into actual questions, I wanted to say on that note of honoring that, we still get lots of private messages from people asking questions, and that's partly what burnt me out, is I was spending hours every day replying privately to people, and I've just learned I can't do that anymore. It's no offense to any of you. It's just my time, my energy, being an empath. I feel what everybody is feeling that I'm reading. So if you have sent us a message with a question, I have not gotten back to you unless it was like an easy to read, and then I can just say, yep, we'll put that in our next question answer video or for the list of question answers. But to respond to people privately and answer your questions privately, I just can't do it anymore. There's just not enough hours in the day, and there's not enough energy within me to do that. So if you want a question answered in our videos, if you can just keep it brief. Some people, of course, they want to tell their whole story, and I get that because we shared our whole story in videos. But when I see like this big, long message, my energy's drained the minute I open the message, and I just can't even read it, let alone sift through it to find the question. So we're still happy to answer your questions, but if you can keep them as like a question without all the backstory and all the details, that would be helpful.
Now, that was a whole lot of talking that between Angie and I we just did. And the question was, how do you keep on going day after day, week after week, month after month, and just keep on doing what you're doing? And the answer is, sometimes it's a little bit tough. And once in a while,
sometimes you just don't.
Waves come crashing into the shore with lots of energy, and then they go away, leaving the shore with no water sometimes. So that's how energy works too. Sometimes you've got a lot, sometimes you've got a little.
And you just learn to honor what you got when you got it.
And for me, I've just been putting my energy in a different direction. But question number one on our forum here is one we just get to bounce right off of and continue on to question number two, because I have an answer for it. Real quick answer. Are we ready?
Yes.
Okay. And by the way, I commented to Ange when we sat down here that our fire behind us feels real flamey tonight. I'm starting to bake. That's okay. I'm just going to have a red glow on my back.
I can turn the fan off so it's not like blowing at us.
I'll be okay. I was really cold about 4 weeks ago when we had a super cold snap outside. So as much as this is really a little bit too warm, it's not. I'm going to just enjoy it. That's the thing. Just think like a kitty cat. Enjoy my sunbeam. So anyway, first question.
Yes.
In your Q&A number 5 on May 15th, 2018.
That was a while ago.
That's a long time ago.
Some people have gone back and rewatched some of our videos, and then they've had other questions. So it's not like this is like a question from that long ago that we've just never answered.
They're referring back to something that feels like a third of a lifetime ago. Rob begins by talking about the list he made of the levels of awareness. I was guided to really be into what he was saying. I paused it right there to write this comment and ask you guys if you have shared this full list anywhere. It's really odd that this question has popped up when I have just spent probably about 2 hours last week going back into that, because I never did finish it and tried to finish it. And I came up with 9 points. And of course, it's always tempting to try to find 11 ways or 11 issues or 11 something.
Because we
And
like our 11 days.
we like our 11 days, just like this one. But I only had 9 points, and I looked at it and I went, I only really have 9 things that I can talk about in that regards. From barely any awareness from how the twin flame couple is coming together to complete awareness and union and the various steps in between. So I don't want to even use the word surrendered. I actually just got real cozy with the thought that I only have 9 points, and that's just genuinely all I could come up with. And I really want to do my own video and talk about that. So I'm going to step way out on my limb and do something called commitment. Within the next week.
Oh, that's commitment.
Yes, it is. Within the next week, I'm going to sit down with me and my cell phone and do a video, and it's going to be focused on a couple of things. This list that's been requested being one of them.
Now, what I find so amazing is the magic of divine timing. This question is probably, we're sad to say, months old because we haven't been doing frequent question and answer videos. But yet, Rob didn't know this question was on the list, and here he is preparing to do this video without even knowing somebody's requesting this information. Divine timing. So cool.
It happens a lot. In the writing of my notes for the book that I'm chipping away at, there's just so much that is divine timing. You just learn things when you're supposed to learn them, not necessarily when you want to learn them, but it ends up being when you need to learn them.
Well, and I was just going to say, divine timing is also about when you're in the flow instead of forcing things. Like, for example, me forcing myself to do a video when it just doesn't feel right. I don't have the energy or whatever. When you learn to honor yourself and be in the flow, it's amazing how synchronicities and divine timing and everything just comes together. It's magic. I love it. It never gets old to me.
When you're in the flow, you also tend to be a little bit more in the realm of positivity.
Yes.
I like that word. And positivity just invites more positivity. So that sometimes you invite your own timing when you need it.
Totally.
One thing that we don't have tonight is focus.
We might be all over the place.
This is going to be a night that seems like one giant tangent. Oh yeah, there's another question. Are we ready for the next one?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll be quiet now.
Oh, no, please talk lots. Please.
On topic, at least.
I just had a workout.
Geez.
I just had a workout tonight. I'm off topic again.
I was just going to say another tangent.
And why did I do this to me? I chose to work out to Enya as my music. I just put myself to sleep in my workout, so I'm still waking up.
Now you're nappy.
Now I'm all nappy.
Finally, I have some energy, and he's nappy.
Oh. Okay.
Okay. Focus.
If it's okay with you sharing this, how do you, both of you, integrate the spiritual routines with the matrix routines? I'm fully immersed in my 3D things, and does that count as a spiritual routine? Sometimes I feel that amazing oneness and time stops while I study, but it seems to get really odd calling it a spiritual practice. I think I know what was just said there. Or do I really need to carve out the time to do meditation, yoga, grounding, or something that would slow down my mind for it to be qualified as part of the work? This really seems to be right up my alley because this is very much how I operate.
Wow, I thought you were going to make me do that one first. It's up your alley? I'm in. I want to hear this.
Spiritual routines with the matrix routines. What I read in this question is that the person asking the question is almost amazed to the point of not believing it, that they can be doing something completely 3D, but yet they fall into a Zen feeling where they almost feel meditative while doing it. I don't know how many times I've told the story of how I can be running, which is torture, but yet my mind is just completely completely relaxed.
Yeah.
You can be doing work and a corner of your consciousness is actually relaxing and out drifting about and enjoying life. So it is definitely possible to do both the spiritual routine and the matrix routine at the same time.
Yep.
And if you feel calm, if you actually come out of doing something that was three-dimensional work, but it felt good, not necessarily because of the work you're doing, but the feeling that you've had afterwards, chances are you've gone into a form of meditation while doing that work. And I do that a lot. That's what happens when I try to type 3,000 words in a night, 20 words in a minute. I just sometimes fall into a zone, and then I look back up and I go, page 1, page 2, page 3, and I'm going, that didn't seem like work at all. I could just go all night. I actually got rest while doing all that. So yes, if you felt rested after doing three-dimensional work, you've hit the meditative nail on the head from that point of view. There's a lot of people that would like to be able to do that, and they can't. So then, as per the next portion of the question, that's what you need to do. If you feel like you've missed out, you've just been stuck in 3D, and it's just felt very dense, and you've got to get away from it, that's when you set aside time to do meditations. It's just the other way of getting balance. If it doesn't come in its own natural balance, sometimes you have to inflict balance.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I was going to address it from, is about balance. The more balanced you become, the more you can go back and forth between the 3D and 5D, the spiritual and the matrix, because you need both. We're not on this earth to just be all spiritual and meditative all the time and up on the mountain and the wise guru. We're here to be human. We're here to experience the human things and the challenges and the frustrations and the studying and whatever else. But it's when you can learn to embrace both. And like, we get asked the question a lot, how do you both have 3D jobs? How do you be spiritual and have 3D jobs? Well, to be honest, I'm not spiritual all the time. I can be at work. I can be very spiritual, and I'm blessed because I work in a place where I have a boss that is like that too. So it's easier. It makes it easier. But it's learning to find the balance. And yes, in my opinion, you do need to carve out time for the things like it was listed, yoga and meditation and what else? Grounding. I definitely carve out time for that. That's my commitment to honoring myself in doing those things. Because if I ignored those, I would be ignoring the parts of me that need those pieces. I need to be grounded, especially as a very natural 5D person. I can't live up here all the time because that's not what we're meant to do on Earth. We're meant to bring that down here. And in order to do that, you have to work on grounding. And a lot of people that are the spiritual twin, which is most of the people that are watching these, no offense to the Matrix twin. I know there are some Matrix twins out there too.
Those poor Matrix twins, you know.
But it's often the spiritual twin that is the more awake one, I will say. But I know we have some people that say, I'm the Matrix twin, and you know, I'm learning these things too, which is awesome. Because it's about balancing your spiritual self and your matrix self and bringing them, merging them together. That's part of union with the self, right? Is all that balance and working both out.
This whole time that Angie's been talking, I'm going to go back to the guru sitting on top of the mountain. Even the guru has to come down and have supper once in a while.
That's right.
One cannot eat snow cones on the top of a mountain all the time and still live.
Leave it to you to say that. Did we answer that question?
I think we
or
did.
Did I just go off on a tangent?
No, the question was halfway answering itself. The answer was yes and yes. Yes, they can work together, and yes, sometimes you have to inflict the balance on your own.
And doing 3D things like the dishes can be meditative, right? A lot of people can meditate while they're doing dishes or something like that. That's not my style, but it doesn't mean it can't be done. So it's
I
letting-
actually do. When I'm cleaning dishes, I can disappear for a couple of 3 seconds at a time. I can also do it while driving. That scares me.
Yeah, that's scary.
I've never run over anybody. It's been a long time since I've even been close to being in an accident. But you know, sometimes 20 blocks later, I can't remember those past 5 lights. They might have been red. Who knew? I didn't get it wrong. It didn't go crunch.
Next question.
Careful, Rob's on the
Leave it to
road.
Rob.
Is it normal to have the mind continue to nag and wanting union in the back of my head even when I feel peaceful and relaxed? Is this letting go the need and the want of my matrix twin? That's a good question. I really find it hard to concentrate on my 3D work, and my ego dreads messing up the chance of union. Which would send me into the abyss of another ego death and mess up my days. Wow, I wish I would have read this question before, because I could read this 4 or 5 times and get 4 or 5 different impressions on this question. How do you tell the chasing apart from the white noise that no twins can detach from?
That's a great question. I like that.
Is it normal to have the mind continue to nag and want union in the back of my head even when I feel peaceful and relaxed?
Yes. At least from my experience. I can only share my experience. And yes, I was totally wanting union and desiring it. And it was never mind the back of my head. It was at the front of my head constantly. It drove me nuts.
You see, union is a goal. And goals can be and typically are quite 3-dimensional, because they're not something that you will just allow. You tend to feel that you have to put work and effort and strive for them. Oh,
She finally broke her bone.
my poor dog is chewing away on a bone, and it broke, and I think it actually hurt her teeth when it snapped. Poor dog.
It's something. There's no teeth on the ground.
No teeth. There was teeth on the ground a couple of weeks ago. Anyway, poor dog.
Oh, it's going to be a very tangenty night. We're
Oh.
sorry.
Is this letting go the need and the want of my matrix twin? That's really all depending upon how often and how deep your own ego is trying to be while you're dealing with being at peace. If your ego is seldom quiet, chances are it's your ego knocking on the door. That's one thing that I've heard time and time again, is to actually get good communication back and forth between yourself and your twin. You need to take ego out of the way, because ego is worse than a filter. It's almost like a barrier.
It's a huge barrier.
So if your ego is always floating around, always nagging you to maybe try a little harder, or even, as stated earlier, if you're at rest and yet you still feel anxious, chances are it's your ego speaking at you. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't stuff filtering in from your twin, but chances are it would be the stuff that the ego is not looking for. The ego is looking for action. It's looking for positive forwardness, where just gentle, subtle, calming messages are likely the style of messages that you would get from your twin, because they're not what the ego's focused on. So the ego might not know how to get in the way of that style of a message.
I'm not fully following, but continue. I don't know if I need to.
Okay. I looked over at you because I saw that. What the heck did he just
What?
say? Yes. The calm messages are more of a 5-dimensional message being sent 5-dimensionally. The ego is working in 3-dimension. So therefore, if a calm message as opposed to an aggressive message is coming through in 5D, the ego would find the aggressive message and alter it, where the calm message would glide right by it because it doesn't know what to look for, because it's coming from a 3D point of view.
That's interesting. Okay. Now, kind of how I take this question is like, oh my God, like I'm thinking too much. I'm in my ego. Am I pushing away union by doing that? And my opinion is no, as long as you're not like the last part of the question is what's the difference between chasing and just, what was it?
And the white noise.
White noise. Yeah. So chasing is when you act on your ego's thoughts of, oh my God, are they going to come back? And oh my God, how come he or she hasn't texted me and all of that. That's, in my experience and opinion, part of the journey. It's learning to work with the ego. And instead of trying to push it away, often what we want to do with the challenging stuff, the dark, the frustrating, the ego, the mind chatter, we want to push it away. It's learning to honor it, because the more you push it away, the louder it's going to get. So when you can go, okay, ego, I understand you really want this, but we need to surrender, and this is how we can do that. And then you practice surrender again. And then every time it comes up, you practice surrender again.
Chasing is parallel to panic. Chasing is fear of losing. Fear of losing is lack of trust. So when you're at peace, you tend to have a lot more of the trust. When you're chasing, you're in fear.
And I'm going to give an example, and it's not going to be as perfect as it can be because it's not twin flame related. But I recently saw this really cool geode kind of carpet that I wanted for my Reiki room, because I've been guided to change my whole Reiki room into like rainbow colors to embrace all the chakras. And I really wanted this, and I was second in line for it, and it kept just showing as pending for over a week. And I'm like, well, it's not sold, so maybe it's still mine. And my mind every day, not just every day, almost every hour was like, okay, what about this rug? It's mine. I got to make it mine. That's the ego. When I would catch myself doing that, I would go, I don't need to chase this. I just need to allow it. And then I would remind myself, and then I would just go, it is mine. I know, I can feel it's mine. When I let go of the ego and the mind chatter and the blah, 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 I could feel that it was mine. I just knew it was. I didn't even know how I knew. I just knew. So I had to recenter myself, go back into that knowing, get out of the mind chatter. Then the mind chatter would come back again. Stop, catch myself, go back into the knowing. So it's practicing doing that. Every time the mind chatter comes up, catch yourself and then center yourself again. Allow the ego to have a voice, because the more you force it to not have a voice, the more it's going to have a voice. But then you can say, okay, ego, I appreciate where you're at, but I'm going to get centered again, and I'm going to get into my knowing rather than my fear.
I really like how Angie put all that. I'm almost afraid to throw my own spin on it for fear of watering it down. But I'm going to try it anyway.
Okay. Can I just say, I did get my carpet.
It's a wonderful carpet.
I didn't have to chase it at all. It just came to me.
Angie's not sure if it's perfect enough. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, he loves it. I'm the one that manifested this damn thing, and every time I go in my Reiki room, I'm like, I don't know, is it too much? It's really, And Rob's like, wow, it's extraordinary.
There is a large, what do you call that? Your bright rainbow cloth that is draped over. It's bright in every rainbow color. Bright, brilliant. This rug is nice and sedate while still having somewhat of a bold statement to it. It's perfect. She's still not sold on it.
I'm not, but that's okay. The point is, when I learned to surrender into it instead of chasing it and constantly asking the lady, well, is it still available? I can get it. I can pick it up now. I had to sit back and just wait. And in fact, she had told me, I will let you know by this certain day if it's still available. And she didn't. So I had to surrender, and I had to say, okay, I guess my knowing was wrong, which I was like, that's surprising, because I'm really good at being able to know my inner knowing and separate that from my wanting and just know that it was mine. Very next day, when I had completely surrendered, because I had thought, okay, guess it's no longer available, she messaged me first thing the next morning, do you still want this? Ta-da! So I know this is an example of a carpet versus your twin flame in union. I mean, it's not quite the same, but it's the fact of anything that we are wanting. The more we want it, the more we push it away. So it's learning to catch yourself when the ego is like, oh, I want it, I want it, I want it. To go, hang on, surrender. And the more you can surrender, the more you're telling the universe, I already have this. So the universe then brings it to you because the universe is going to honor whatever you know and affirm. If you're sending the message, I want this, the universe is hearing, I don't have this. So you're going to get more of I don't have. If you say, I already have this, then it comes to you. And it's a practice. I mean, I'm still practicing all the time. But that's what I love about manifesting. It keeps you practicing.
I'm going to say almost everything that Angie said with way less words and from a completely point of view, and it's going to sound completely different.
That's why we do videos together. You get the masculine and the feminine and the matrix and the spiritual, and you get it all.
I like the whole combination of the question. It's really quite well done. But I'm really hung up on the ego dreads messing things up, and if it did, it would send me into the abyss of another ego death and mess up my days. This is, if there was any one starting point for dealing with twin flame-ism, it would be mastering the concept that ego is not a foundation. It is a tool. Meditation is a tool. Relaxation is a tool. Balance is a tool. And ego is just another tool in the toolbox. And so many people, in order to stay motivated, have allowed ego to be their motivator. And therefore, when they run into situations that are stressful, their most anxious helper is their ego. And that can power you through some situations. But ultimately, it's not usually your best guide, especially when dealing with things that are outside of the realm of 3D. Ego needs to have the ability to be completely set aside, and other tools that are more allowing of peaceful resolution to step in and allow a person to just let go or to be or to manifest without the directness or aggression that ego can have. So a lot of people, when they're looking for balance, are trying to balance their ego, when actually what they need to do is open up a whole new chapter, a whole new segment of their life that allows ego to not always be their first go-to helper whenever they're in a situation.
Wow. I might have to rewatch this video and listen to that again. That kind of went, whoo.
But that's what you do when you realize you're second in line for your carpet. You let go, you just let things work their way through. You've learned how to set aside your ego and just live in the knowingness, not the hopingness and the working hard and the panic and the calling every 2 hours, is it mine, is it mine? You just allow things to happen. You've allowed your ego to be able to be set aside, and you've allowed other things like your knowingness to step in and be the peaceful resolution to, are you going to get the carpet or not?
Gotcha.
You've learned that.
Yes. It still takes practice, though. It's a constant, and I guess that's one of the things I want to reiterate, because so many people think you get to union and you got everything mastered. No, we're not going to master everything by the time we die. Like it's not possible unless you're like a Jesus or a Buddha, like you're literally an ascended master. We get as many times around this and other planets as we want to keep mastering, and we're constantly mastering. When we master one thing, then we're on to another thing. So I just want to reiterate to people, because and this is another question later, like so many people think you have to be completely balanced, You have to have no ego. You have to have no fear in order to get to union. That's not the case at all. It's not possible. So just to allow yourself to be. Like, don't try so hard. That's, I guess, part of the thing is people try so hard, and by trying so hard, they're pushing it away.
And going off in just a little tangent that I should be able to keep to under 30 seconds. Good luck with that.
Yeah, I should time that one.
Angie talked about you've mastered getting to union. Sure, you practice all the skills that it takes to get to union. And then when you get to union, all those skills are not perfectly relevant anymore. There's the skills to staying in union. There's the skills to growing in union. There's the skills to balancing union with the 3-dimensional and the 5-dimensional. So people think that when they get to union, they've got it made. Yeah, they've just mastered the first few steps of having it made. Then there's all the next steps.
More.
And the thing is when you make it to union, all of a sudden the steps that you learn to get to union, that you, let's say, spent 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years learning, finally get you to union. Now the next steps, you don't have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years to learn. You almost need them right away. It's almost like you have to get to union and then have that already mastered once you get there so that you can stay there. And that's where a lot of people think, we've made it to union, and then they realize it's just as hard because the skill set's now different.
And you're building on previous skills. You're always building and learning and advancing and growing.
Now it's really nice to get to union. That gives you a person a huge amount of confidence to continue on with the growth. So don't get it wrong. It's not like it's one big letdown. It definitely isn't. It's just really eye-opening all of a sudden. You get there and
it's
you
just
go,
not the
great.
end, though. So many people think you get to union and
Ta-da!
it's all like blissful angels singing all the time. No, you're still always learning, growing, healing.
I'm learning how to write a book. Not this guy.
Which is shocking beyond belief to me that I'm the writer. I'm the one that's had like the 57 journals, and he's never written a journal in his life, and he's the one writing the book first, and I'm sitting back reading books. Just goes to show how people can change. Now, so much for your 30 seconds of tangent. Well done. That was like 3 minutes. Next question.
I need my days to be 37 hours long.
That's true, because you're a talker.
Oh. And I need my writing evenings to be 24 hours long per evening.
Next question.
Next question.
Oh, guru.
Oh, yeah. I'm way too humble to accept that.
Do you want me to read the question?
I gotta figure out where I was on the page, that's all.
Oh boy. We blame Enya for Ron's nappiness.
I'm accepting what is and living in here and how I started to feel better. I'm working on it. I still haven't figured out what it is. As I still fall back into the darkness from time to time. Oh, falling back into darkness. Do you have any tips on to continue to feel better and not fall back into darkness? I really want to be at the top of my games and stay there as long as possible. Or should I just accept the darkness and see it as part of my inner union process?
Yes, yes, yes. That's my answer.
A lot of times, darkness is also a time for stopping. It's a time for rest. You might not like the point that you're at, because it doesn't necessarily feel good. But usually, when you're in darkness and you come out of darkness, it's because you found another corner of motivation that allows you to pry the darkness aside and step back into the light and continue on. Usually darkness comes when you're surrounded with lack of clarity, lack of direction. So sometimes you do have to step back into the darkness to find your next steps forward.
And the darkness is part of the light. So many people, again, like banishing the ego. They're like, oh, I don't want to even have an ego. So they try to ignore it, and then it comes back screaming. Same thing with the darkness. You need it. You can't have light without dark, and you can't have dark without light. There's contrast, exactly. So every time the darkness comes up, it's not about letting it swallow you so you get so stuck in it that you become, whether it's suicidal or so depressed that you can't get out of bed or anything like that, but learning to embrace the darkness, and instead of fearing it or instead of wanting to push it away, ask it, why are you here? What do I need to look at? What do I need to learn? What do I need to experience? What do I need to grow from? All of those kind of questions will help you get some answers of why the darkness is there. And again, like we were saying before with the ego, the more you try to push something away, the more it's going to come back. What you resist persists. So when the darkness comes, instead of trying to avoid it, sit with it. This might work differently for different people, but what I do is I go into my meditation room and I literally sit there with my teddy bear. I've had this teddy bear since I was like 8 years old. And I sit there and I hold my teddy bear and I cry and I let myself feel whatever it is that darkness, and allow it to come up and find out why it's there. What is it wanting to show me? What is it wanting to teach me? Or what needs healing? And again, that's another thing. Just because you're in union, it doesn't mean all your healing's done. I still do this even though I'm in union. You just do less of it because there's less work to be done, but it's still there. But the flip side of the question is, like, they were saying, what do I do instead of? It's also a balance of, when the darkness comes, yes, embrace it, but don't let it swallow you. So that's when the previous question about meditation and grounding and journaling and all of those things, being out in nature is very helpful to learn to balance the darkness. Because otherwise, if we just sit in the darkness constantly, we're not even going to want to get out of bed. And I'm sure some of you have had that, where you get so low, and I've had that, where you're literally suicidal, or you just can't function. You can't even go to work because you feel so low. So that's where those other practices come in. So again, it's not about banishing the darkness, but it's not about letting it eat you up too. Use those other practices and tools to get you out of it.
Sometimes people who are very obsessive compulsive will find something to grind on, something that that consumes them, and it ends up being the complete focal point of their life. They do that one thing. And if that one thing grinds to a halt, they've got two choices. One is to find something else immediately to replace what all of a sudden isn't filling them up anymore, or else you fall into the darkness. How does a person stop falling into darkness? Diversification. Have more than one thing that is the light in your life. If I can't go bike riding, I can go running. If I can't go running, I can go hiking. If I can't go hiking, I can come inside and play music on my stereo. If that doesn't really fancy me, maybe I can try playing a computer game. If I'm feeling maybe a little bit more motivated and none of the above is working, then maybe I can sit down and type out some notes, work on my diary, or maybe chip away at a book. I've just almost got an endless list of things that I can do that I consider to be positive. And therefore, if something that I'm working on grinds to a halt, I've got a huge safety net around me. I don't have the only other choice of just falling into darkness. So I sometimes wonder if people that are falling continuously into darkness have allowed themselves to only have one piece of light.
It's a very good point. I do it a little differently. When I'm really low, I'll sit, because I like to write, I'll sit with my journal and ask myself, what brings me joy? And just write down everything that brings me joy. And then I go, well, then why am I not doing some of that? And then so I'll do some of that. So find a piece of joy in the midst of the darkness.
somehow or another I've been, I'm going to use the word lucky enough to never be completely consumed by darkness. I don't think I've had
It's
a,
very lucky.
yeah, it
It's
actually,
brutal.
it actually is. And it sometimes leaves me in a position where I maybe just can't have a proper empathy for a situation where someone has fallen completely into darkness. It's not something that I condemn, it's just something I've never experienced firsthand. And I don't consider myself to be an exceptionally positive person. I can have moments of negativity. I can be totally choked or even angry at various things, but I tend to get over it fairly quick. Unless it's something to do with computers.
We won't go there. Next question.
Okay, computers plunge me into darkness.
Next question. The truth really is you punch them.
Once. I had to buy a new monitor from my place of work because I destroyed the old one. Its time had come. My hand divinely found its way with fantastic timing to its top center portion of its screen, and I put it out of its misery. It was suffering.
Rob rarely gets angry, but when he does, man, look
Oh.
out.
Inanimate objects only.
Yes. Okay, seriously, next question before I lose it.
Ah,
I really don't know what you want, Cookie. You're restless.
yeah, I still think Cookie hurt her tooth again. Or her lack of tooth.
I don't think so. Okay, can you please just read the next question?
I actually just tried to scan through it a couple of times and I can't make any sense of it, so I'm working on it. As I realize mistakes and I'm wanting to apologize for my past behaviors, but I do not want to create unnecessary stress for my twin as he is with another. Is it a bad idea to apologize?
Can I answer first? Actually,
Yes.
okay. I was going to say maybe you should because I'm the one that apologized to you when you were in that situation. So I don't know if it's bad. But I did this a couple years before Rob and I came into union. I was with my karmic, and we were, of course, going through lots of challenges. And I had discovered that I was doing the same thing to that man as I used to do with Rob. In other words, my karmic at the time labeled it, come here, go away, because I was so afraid of intimacy that I would want it and I would pull somebody close, but then when they got too close, I was like, get away, and then I would be mean and push them away. So when I finally realized this pattern, I had to send Rob a text. We were now in communication. So this must have been 2012 or 2013.
Probably about 2013-ish.
Yeah.
I'm having a lot of troubles with my writing that way.
It gets all blurry, the dates.
The blender.
But I sent him this big, long text, and I'm so sorry, and I've learned this in my current relationship. I went on and on and on.
And she never apologized for sending me a big, long text.
No, I don't think actually, I probably did. I was tempted to get out that text because if you know our Journey to Union videos, we've shared our texts in videos, so I have them all printed out, and I was going to find that text, but it was a long text. But anyway, I sent him an apology, even though he was in a long-term relationship. So I don't know if that was the right thing to do or not. You never did respond to it. There is that fact. But what was it like when you got it? Do you remember? Was it like, oh my God, I'm in another relationship. Why are you telling me that? I mean, I wasn't trying to be in a relationship with him or anything. I was just simply becoming so aware of my poor treatment of men that I needed to apologize.
I think it strongly depends upon your audience. If somebody's going to apologize to me for something that they feel that they've done wrong, I'm not going to stop them. I'm going to let them have their peace, find their way to their own peace, even if I can't really remember ever being slighted by anybody.
But did it feel awkward being that you were in another relationship and now here an ex-girlfriend that you didn't know at the time was your twin flame because you didn't know anything about twin
No.
flames? Did it feel weird that why is she telling me all of this now?
No, didn't feel weird.
Okay.
Didn't feel weird. If I remember this correctly, I actually felt a little bit honored that you were capable of being honest about your feelings to me. It felt fairly comfortable to me, but sometimes I can be a little bit of a weird duck. I don't know if I'm necessarily all that average when it comes
No, you're
to stuff like
definitely a
this.
weird duck. There's just no question. You gotta be a weird duck to be on the twin flame journey.
Open the door, sometimes you just end up going through it. Or someone gives you a little nudge and you go through it.
Now, to answer this person's question, though, I go with your response. I don't think it's ever wrong to express your feelings to your twin flame if it's authentic without being controlling, needy, manipulative,
Condescending, that's a bad one.
yes, any of those things. But if you are just trying to open communication and express yourself and your awarenesses of yourself, whether it's by an apology or something else, whether they're in another relationship or not, I don't think that's wrong as long as you're very aware of your intentions. If your intentions are to get them out of that relationship, then absolutely not. But if your intentions are just to communicate clearly and go, God, I'm so sorry. Like, I can't believe I did this to you, or I can't believe whatever I did or didn't, or whatever the situation is. That's what this journey is all about, is being authentic, because that's part of the balance. That's part of the union. When you are in union with yourself, you're very aware of your mistakes and able to own up to them. That's part of healing the ego, because the ego is like, oh, I didn't do that. That's not me. But when you have worked through enough of the ego stuff to be able to say to yourself, I made a mistake, but then let alone take a step further and say it to your twin, that's a big step. And I think it's important to express that if you're doing it with the right intentions.
Apologies are either done for someone else or for your own peace of mind or a bit of both. And if the person you're apologizing to can understand, I think is a better word, understand why you're apologizing, whether it's to assist them in understanding or feeling better, or whether they can just understand that sometimes you're apologizing because you've hurt yourself using them. Either way, most of the time, a form of apology is usually accepted, or at least understood. And that's really all an apology needs to do, is create some form of understanding. So, in going back to what Angie says, as long as it's sincere and with the purpose of healing, not directing.
Or trying to get them out of a relationship, or trying to manipulate them to now be with you and dump their other person, whatever that kind of intention.
Then go ahead.
It's going to backfire if you're going to do it for those reasons.
If it's heartfelt and honest, then sure, fill your boots, apologize, and don't even be afraid to maybe explain why you're apologizing, hence why the big long text, so that there'd be clarity, so that the other person at least knows, or maybe even learns something more about you as you're apologizing.
And one last piece is also, when you're doing that, make sure you don't have expectations of them responding or how they're going to respond, what they're going to say, because very much like Rob, they might not respond at all. I got 0 response, but I wasn't expecting one. I didn't need one. It was just for my own purposes. Once I realized how horribly I had treated him all those years ago, I needed to make amends. Whether he got it, felt it, understood it, that was up to him. I didn't have an expectation of hearing back. I just really needed to clear that up from my own conscience.
Agreed.
Okay, so now this one, do you want me to tackle this, or are you going to brave it?
No, I think you better tackle this.
Okay.
We've got a mile-long question that's full of really good information. It asks about 14 different questions, and I'm not saying this to be mean or anything, but it's a fair bit disjointed.
Yeah, well, you can tell the person wrote it with a lot of emotion, so they're just kind of all over the place, and then realizing, oh yeah, you don't know this fact. So now that I've said all this, I got to tell you this fact. So the fact is after, and you're like, what? So if we read it, it'll just be confusing. Sorry.
So yeah, so the whole story has got lots of embedded questions, and you could sure tell that the person really, really, really wanted to get their point across, but just didn't know how to present it. I just can't read it in a way that would make sense. Angie wants to take a run at it.
Well, I'm not even going to read it. I'm going to just explain. I'll read like kind of the first sentence. So this person is saying, my TF finally admits he loves me, tells me 6 times, calls me for 4 nights straight, and admits he's been fighting the love for 5 years. He said a switch went on, and now he sees it all, which is funny that he used that language, because that's the language I use with Rob and I. That's totally what it felt like, a switch in my soul had turned on. So anyway, they ended up spending 4 days together straight, like spent 4 days and nights together, and everything was wonderful and great. And then once they separated again, she was completely overwhelmed and had so much fear and triggering, and she was like, oh my God, like I thought I was over this. I thought I was balanced. What is going on? So that's question number 1. Then she's now fearing that he's going to go back in his cave, because she's obviously experienced this many times where, you know, they would have time together and then he would pull apart, and now she's like, oh my God, now it's me. But then she sends him this big long voice message explaining that she doesn't want to do this anymore. This whole dance of we're close and then we're not, and this intimacy and then the fear.
It says something about 22-minute voice message.
Yes.
No,
That's something I would do.
Yeah, I used to leave people 30-minute, 45-minute
Totally.
messages all the time just because I could. Sounds normal.
But if your twin's not used to that, that might be a lot. So yeah, she says, was I right to send him a 22 voice message after he ghosted me after this critical time? So here she is afraid, after they've been together and they're now back, you know, on their own again. She's afraid, and all this fear is coming up that he's going to do this, and yes, he does. So now she's had 2 weeks without hearing from him, and she's sad and confused and heartbroken, and there's been no response to his message, and she's like, so first of all, what about the fear? Why do I still have this fear? And second of all, did I do the right thing by sending him this big long message and telling him how I feel and telling him I don't want to do this dance anymore if we get close and we pull away?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why are people so afraid to communicate, especially if they've had this pulling apart, going back together, pulling apart, going back together? Sometimes, you know, when something keeps on coming back together, sometimes you have to trust, or maybe you don't have to trust, that if you take the next step and actually communicate, that it's going to come back together.
Mm.
People are afraid to apologize. People are afraid to communicate. They think that once they've communicated, the world has come to an end. When quite often, yes, the person they've communicated to has gone into overload. Like this poor guy, he finally squeezes out an admission that he loves her, and then they spend 4 days together. This poor guy's got to recuperate. He's got a whole lot of information that now he's got to resort and file, and then a communication happens, and someone's worried that they don't hear back from him in 17 minutes. Okay, give people a little bit of time. They got to digest. They got to have a chance for the ripples in the pond to calm down a bit before they respond. Now, okay, yeah, even I would be nervous if someone took 2 weeks to respond. But yeah, when people are being bombarded with lots of new information, even if it's just positive information and loving information, caring information, or just being with someone for a long period of time when they're not used to it, information. Yeah, that what you gotta know that they're going to be an overload.
And the the core issue to all of this, why the fear and all the, running away again, is intimacy. What is intimacy? Into
Into
me
me,
see.
see.
There's our 1 hour notice.
Oh,
We gotta learn to talk faster, less tangents. No?
no, I think we do just fine. I've seldom had a tangent that didn't mean something.
Okay, fair enough. So that's the issue. Now, the other question, okay, so let's answer question number one. Why does this trigger fear in me? Well, because there's still fear to heal. And again, like this person's thinking, I thought we were so close to union. Just because you're close to union, it doesn't mean you're not going to have fear. This goes back up to some of the discussion we had earlier. Just because you're getting close to union, it doesn't mean you've like healed everything and you've got everything figured out and you're totally balanced. Rob and I think it was February, maybe January.
It would have to be January.
Okay, January of 2014.
15? 15.
See, we can't even remember
Oh.
when we came into union. It's so confusing.
15.
Okay, January of 2015, we were meeting out in a park one afternoon, like we used to do, meet all over the place to just connect. And I was freaking out. My ego was in overdrive, going, what are you doing getting involved with another man? You're barely out of a relationship with one, and you've been so hurt in that relationship for 6 years, and now you're going to jump into another one? Are you nuts? And my ego's just going crazy. And so once Rob and I had our meeting, and he could tell I was freaked out and like just distant and emotionally not there, because I have done enough work on myself, I was at least aware of what was going on. So I sent him a text when I got home and I said, this is what's going on. My ego's freaking out. I've had to have a conversation with my ego. I'm okay now, but I just needed to know that's what was happening. So it's not about the fact that you're never going to have fear again. It's just learning to know how to work through it and how to communicate it with the other person so they know as well. Look, this is what I'm going through. You don't need to tell them every single detail because that might be overwhelming to them. But just give them the basics. Communication, right, is so key to the whole thing. So, yes, you can still have fear. And my point, by the way, was January this happened. March of that same year, only like probably less than 2 months, because it was probably mid-January, less than 2 months later, we were moved in. Like, he was living with me, and he hasn't left since, and I haven't left since either. We just celebrated 6 years on March 2nd of being in physical union. So within a 2-month span, I had like a complete freak out of my ego, and then we were in union. So again, my point is, just because you're in fear, it doesn't mean union can't happen or it's so far away because you're so out of balance. No, it's just part of the process.
And sometimes just having a change, even though it looks somewhat the same, one portion of something that comes at you can create fear, and yet something. You can tell we're past an hour.
Sorry.
Oh my goodness.
At you.
That's.
Come on, I thought that was awesome.
That is awesome. That's something I would do. And the next day, something very similar can come your direction. Not at
you.
Not at you. And you can accept it. And I'll use this as my example. As I was planning on leaving since it's just so new in my mind, my 12-year karmic relationship, I had a chance to go back to a previous karmic relationship, my karmic one, as I describe her. And I went, no, that's the wrong thing to do. You just come out of a relationship. You've got all that baggage to sort and put away. And this person you've just never managed to settle down with because you just don't trust that that's going to work. And now you're thinking you're just going to throw yourself at a past relationship just to make it easy to transition out of the one that you're in? No, you've got another plan. Go ahead, do it. But then a couple of months later, a very similar situation, somebody from my past, the situation is similar. It's still ending one relationship, going right into another relationship, feels so right because the situation is different. One created panic, the other thought created a combination of growth and confidence. So if you're in a situation where it just doesn't, where it doesn't feel right to do something, probably honor that. It might just represent itself slightly different the next day or the next week or the next month, and it'll seem okay.
Yep. Okay, I want to go back. We have two more pieces to this, I think. Okay, so the question is, was I right to send him a 22 long voice message? So, not that you were wrong or right, but it's about, again, learning. Take everything as a learning, not, oh God, I failed. Now, union's never going to happen. No, you got lots of shots at it. It's not like you screw up once and it's over, it's done. But the fact is, was your 22 long message, 22-minute long message?
See,
yeah, it's tricky to get all those words out.
It is, especially when one of them is missing off the piece of paper.
Was it very emotional and unbalanced, or were you able to center yourself first before sending the message so that you could send a clear message? In other words, was it kind of like how I explained in the beginning of the video, how I'll get like a big long email from somebody and it's just I can't even read the words because all I feel is energy, 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 intensity. And that's what might be what happened to him, is all he could feel was your energy. He couldn't even hear the words because it was just an overwhelm of energy. So if you could center yourself first, be grounded, be balanced, be out of fear, and be in love, in peace, then send the message, then honestly, the timing, the time amount doesn't really matter. It's the energy behind what is said, not how much is said, in my opinion. So it might have just overwhelmed him more and pushed him further away because he's just had 4 days of like super intense connection. And now he's had this 22-minute long message of like more. And he's just like, dear God, I can't take anymore. I'm on overload.
When's this overload gonna end?
Right.
This almost reminds me of an ego situation again. A person wouldn't send a 22-minute long message if it didn't resonate with them at the time to do so. So you go ahead and you send your 22-minute long message, and then your ego steps in and cross-examines you for the next X amount of days until you get your evidence.
Why did I do that?
Why did you do this? But yet you were just following what you were resonating with. You have no evidence whether it was a mistake or not. You allow the ego's cross-examination without even knowing what the result was of your communication to drive you into despair. So not saying that ego is doing a wrong thing. Once in a while, you get cross-examination on something and you say, hey, wait a minute, I should have done something different maybe. You start to doubt yourself a little bit, but I don't want to send everybody running off to the internet. But one of my favorite songs of the past year was a song from close to 30 years ago. It was from Jerry Rafferty. And the song is titled basically, if you get it wrong, you'll get it right next time. If you get it wrong, you'll get it right next time.
That's a good lyric.
And it's kind of a goofy song, but really the whole bit about it is sometimes you just got to put it out there. And if it didn't resonate with the rest of the world, it only resonated with you, well, you'll get it right next time. But most of the time, it's about don't you worry, don't you whine. If you get it wrong, you'll get it right next time. People over-exaggerate the consequences of making a mistake. Leads back to one of my favorite sayings is, things are usually only half as bad as they seem.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to keep it in check. If you do something, remember, generally you wanted to. Trust it until it proves itself to be untrustworthy. Give it the benefit of the doubt. you did at the time. Don't take that away from yourself.
Excellent. Now, I just want to go, this person has one more question. So
Okay.
they're saying, I felt things were going too fast, but now I think he's scared to death. No doubt he probably is. Because if you're scared, he's probably scared too. So the question is, what should I do now? So this is after you've had your 4 days together, after you've left the long voice message. What do you do now? Let him go. Let him have some space. And I don't mean let him go like forever, but just give him some space. Like even if it's been 2 weeks or longer, clearly he needs space. It doesn't mean you can't, if you feel guided, if you feel nudged from here, not from here, but if you feel genuinely nudged to follow up in a few more weeks or months, whatever, because obviously you don't want this dance to go on forever. But know that if you feel fear, so does he. So allow him this time to process. I can remember when Rob and I were coming into union, I wanted to just go blah and share everything about twin flames, but I was very guided to give him little bits at a time, and only after he gave something to me. He had to open up and kind of in his own way let me know he was ready. That's what I was very guided to do. And he would say something, and then I would go, okay, now I can tell you this. For example, one time he had said something about us being on stage, and he had a microphone in his hand, and I was like, oh my God, he'd never known what our mission was, and now I could tell him this because he could see it. So maybe he just needs his own time to process things, and then you can share more when he's ready and when you're ready, because clearly if you're in fear, you need time to process things too. So give yourself both some space without thinking space means it's never going to happen.
Empathy. I'm almost going to disagree with Angie, but
By the way, I just have to point out, I just noticed it's 111,
111 and a bit.
43.
Yeah, when I finally focused my eyes on it, it was 111:44.
Okay.
Yes, we're running a little bit low on, I don't want to say we're running low on time. Time is kind of infinite. But this
I just wanted to point out the 111.
Yeah,
On 11 day.
very true. Empathy. I have a dog.
Have empathy for the dog.
I have empathy for the dog. She's coming back for the 4th time for more attention. We're sitting on the floor. Of course she wants more attention. We're down at her level. So, not disagreeing with Angie, but just presenting a different way of looking at it. If the whole situation has got you in a tailspin, and you think that your twin's also in a tailspin, as long as you're feeling like maybe it was a bit too much, maybe don't be afraid to say hi. That was wonderful. The 4 days was great. The communication has been great, but I'm really feeling overloaded. I wonder if you are too, because, wow, I feel okay. It's just felt like it's been a bit much. And with that bit of empathy and understanding coming at them, if they're feeling the same way, then it gives them permission to actually honor their feelings.
Yes.
If they're feeling like it's been too much and been an overload, you might just get an answer back saying, yeah, I'm feeling just the same way. Where before, if all they're doing is getting more bombardment of positivism and they're feeling overloaded, they might be afraid to admit that. Their own ego getting in the way of them actually expressing what they need, which might be a little bit of understanding, a little bit of time, a little bit of space. So sometimes if you can honestly, step into a realm of expressing empathy for where someone else is, especially if you're feeling similar and saying that you are feeling the same way because you are, then it'll open the door for maybe to them to be not afraid to communicate how they're feeling too, because you've already given them the opportunity.
That's a very good point.
So, yeah, I liked Angie's point. I think Angie liked my point. We're great that way.
Yeah.
Very pointed answers.
I'd give you a kiss, but I'm goopy.
She's goopy. She's got the bright red on. I just don't feel like wearing bright red tonight.
It's stuck to my lips. It's not going to be on yours.
You should have seen us before the start of the video. It would be so hard to recreate.
It was hilarious.
But we looked at each other and she wanted to give me a kiss.
Actually, you wanted to give me a kiss.
I wanted to give you a kiss and then I went, oh man, that's just like fresh lipstick. I'm just not going to go there. I just really am not. And so I turned my head as if to say, you turn your cheek. But then she thought, oh, Rob's turning his head. I'm going to give him a kiss. No, I'm still not wanting to be part of this lipstick bit. So I pulled away again and I shook my head no, and I told her to turn her head.
Without words.
Without words. This is all done in mime. So finally she turns her head and I give her a kiss, which is where I started to begin with. It was a whole big long process of, no, I don't want you to kiss me. I want to kiss you. It was just
so funny.
Yeah.
And that's what got us all laughing, which is why we started our video all giddy.
Yeah,
we were just laughing about this stupid thing.
We were fresh out of that.
Yes.
Oh.
But now we're at the end of the video, and we're gonna wrap it up.
Yes, we are.
Yes. So thank you for all of your questions. And we'll try not to be so long, but no guarantees anymore. I'm learning that I don't give myself rules right now. I just go with what I can go with.
And thanks for giving us a few minutes at the beginning of the video to get into our flow.
Yes.
We kind of needed that. We not always when you want to do something are you in the right mind frame to actually do it. It took a little bit to get into it. I woke up.
Yes, you did.
I did. I finally woke up.
Now it's time to go to bed.
No more Anya for workouts.
No.
Next time it's ZZ Top.
Oh boy. All right, we're gonna wrap this up. Enough giddiness. So thanks for your questions. We love you guys, and we will. Well, Rob will be back with a video soon.
Oh, I said 1 week. No, I've done it.
So look out for that.
I'm glad I got my notes ready.
Yes.
All right.
And happy 11 day.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.